Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Heavens, and welcome to another episode of CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the roller coaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we're not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations because sometimes I have no filter. So, if you're a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. And today, I am so glad to have the very wonderful Smita here with me. Smita is a CMO and a senior executive. She's got 25 years experience in the industry, working with private equity firms to support growth and commercial strategies for their portfolio companies. Smita has worked for companies like Finastra, so you were once one of my competitors when I was at Fiserv, and Tata Group and Cisco, some really great big companies there. So lots of experience. I'm really, really excited to tap into some of this amazing experience. So, Smitha, we decided on a title for this podcast, which was the Two-Speed CMO. And the reason for that's going to come out in a minute. But I remember us having a conversation. The reason that we chose this particular theme is because we had one of our regular catch-ups, usually involving wine. And we were talking about the evolution of the CMO role. And a few things kind of came up during that discussion. And there is this kind of like confusion, I think, around the general kind of purpose for the role, which seems super crazy, right? Because, it's a chief marketing officer. We've been around for some time now. But I think a lot of people kind of forget that when you're moving into that senior kind of leadership role, that actually suddenly your customer isn't your ICP, your normal kind of customer that is when you're just a marketing kind of lead. Your customer is actually the rest of the business. So there's a lot of like relationship building that the CMO has to do and education with the rest of the leadership team around what marketing is and the value that we bring. And then, of course, there's that kind of age-old question around or discussion around marketing being kind of slaves to sales. And I know we're all grown-ups here and, marketing, our remit is to generate revenue at the end of the day. But, it's a partnership. It's a partnership with that whole leadership team. So that's what I really want to kind of like dig into here is how can we give more clarity when it comes to that leadership team of what the remit of marketing is, and then how can we sort of explain the difference, I suppose, between or the partnership, not difference, the partnership between sales and marketing. So anyway, let's dig into it then. The first kind of question I'd love to ask you to open up, and this is something that just bugs me all the time, and you must have had this so many times in kind of interviews or when you're talking to some of your customers. It's when we get asked as a marketing leader, are you a brand or are you a demand person? This 2025, why does this question still come up? Please help me.
First of all, thank you, Lucy, for having me on this platform. I'm so, so glad to be here. I know we both are so passionate about this topic that we have talked about numerous times over the last few years, over many glasses of wine. And now everyone gets to hear, which is brilliant. So, to your point, it still comes up because CEOs want a shortcut for will you drive growth outcomes? But I would say, Lucy, and for the interest of everybody listening, it's a false binary. Demand converts existing intent. Brand and product narrative builds preference and reduce friction on the path to revenue. Now, if you over-index on demand, you can hit near-term numbers, but inflate your customer acquisition cost and increase discounting over time. On the other hand, if you over-index on your brand, you risk being liked but not forecastable. So I would say, Lucy, a mature CMO runs two speeds, hence our lovely topic for the day. Deliver in quarter while building the assets that make next year's growth cheaper, which is clarity, proof, and trust. So in practice, I watch win rates, sales cycle length, and price realization as the bridge between brand and demand. If those aren't moving, it's rarely a volume problem, it's confidence and differentiation. So, in a nutshell, I would say if you only do one, you either look busy or look brilliant. Neither guarantees revenue.
That's so interesting. I mean, I love that. I love those all those kind of analogies, and you've definitely brought to life that kind of like two speeds because it's that I almost had that vision in my head of two cars kind of like racing against each other all the time, and like how do you know which one's kind of like winning the race, or you know what I mean? Like how are you pushing one rather than the other? And yeah, so thank you for bringing that to life.
I love that you're talking about car analogy, given that I got my license you for the first
Yeah.
time, UK driving license earlier this year.
Amazing. Well done.
Thank you. And it's like if somebody asked me that, do you prefer the steering wheel or the gearbox? Hang on, you can't choose one. You need both to drive the car.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Exactly. And that's the thing. It's always the kind of the either or, isn't it? And this is it's really interesting because it goes back to what I was saying at the start. I think the misunderstanding around marketing and how people that's why they're asking that question, right? Whether it isn't one or the other, whether it's brand or or demand. Where you have an organization then that really doesn't understand kind of what marketing does, and they are sort of like pitching the two kind of against one another, what kind of signals, I suppose, are you looking for about like how companies are viewing that? So like which bucket that they sit in, whether they really do understand what marketing does or whether they are viewing it as a kind of like an either or. Like how do you know?
It's a very good question. A question I'm often asked now as an advisor to portfolio companies when they're building out their go-to-market function. Then should it be a standalone? Should it report to the CEO, role under the CRO? And I would say that this signals that the company wants marketing tied more directly to commercial outcomes. That's understandable. Many organizations have had marketing measured on activity, not impact. So I would say the upside share is shared accountability and faster prioritization. However, the risk is narrowing marketing to pipeline operations, optimizing handoffs and reporting while the growth model gets ignored. I would argue good marketing still has to create demand, sharpen the narrative, and improve conversion cycles, not just fill a funnel with leads and leads and leads. So, the healthier model is shared metrics that balance the short and the long term, which is pipeline velocity, pipeline quality, win rates, cycle time, and discounting. That's how marketing stays as a growth function, not a dashboard function. Now, I don't care where it sits, apologies, where it sits, but if the only metric is pipeline, marketing just becomes a reporting function,
Mm.
not the growth function that you and I talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And how like have you been kind of in a situation before then where you've seen um you've seen companies lose kind of strategic brand equity because marketing has been that, pipeline generator all the time. They've been pushed more down the sales route.
Absolutely, yes. And it happens when marketing becomes very reactive, building one-off assets and running ad hoc campaigns that you and I have seen to serve the quarter over quarter without the consistent point of view in the market. You get lots of activity, but less clarity. And over time, you see what happens is customers can't easily explain why you're different. Why do the deals default to price and risk reduction? So you typically see it in the commercial signals, more discounts going on, longer cycles, and more no decision outcomes. Now, the fix isn't to deprioritize sales leads. It's to stop treating every request as unique and repeat a repeatable narrative, proof, and content system that sales can reuse and scale. And I would say so. When marketing becomes a service desk, the market stops hearing a point of view. I mean, it makes me laugh. I have to share this. Recently, I was, having this conversation with one of the board members where they mentioned that their CMO, is always about you have to say yes to sales, you have to say yes to all sales function, all the functions. And thankfully, the board member is an erstwhile commercial CMO, so they were able to bring in a much more growth mindset, much more, instead of service led, think about being collaborative partners between sales, product, customer focused functions, and marketing so that we all have shared remit and shared outcomes that's towards top line and bottom line growth.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. That's yeah, exactly. And that how if they were in that kind of like position then that person you were talking about, like how do they kind of like, I don't want to put like words in your mouth, but like how do they communicate that the kind of the value back then about the kind of the brand equity? Do you know what I mean? Like how yeah, how are they sort of like telling that story? How have you dealt with that in the past?
Oh, so again, I think I've talked about in terms of how do you run it as an investment portfolio, right? So the way I run, like I always say, I'm not a marketer, I'm a business person, and I like to run my organization as an investment portfolio about how do you sort of ring fence capacity for three things: pipeline coverage now, conversion improvement, and future demand creation. And I think if I add to that I think something we talked about when we were thinking about this podcast around frameworks and dashboards
Mm.
CMOs can use to show CEOs, where upfront, when you start talking about how brand demand and product marketing can work together to accelerate revenue, then you just keep it simple, keep it commercial. One operating dashboard with three sections. Talk about efficiency, talk about confidence, talk about conversion. So what I do is I typically, when I simplify the dashboard, link it back to the revenue metrics, then I map ownership. Demand captures intent. Product marketing, solution marketing sharpens why us and improve conversion. Brand reduces friction and protects the pricing. Now, when those teams operate as one system, you just then don't get more pipeline, you get better deal economics. So I would say think of it as one system. Trust creates attention, attention creates demand, demand converts with the right story.
I love this. And this is something that oh my goodness, I bang on about all the time is the kind of storytelling aspect to it. And this is really interesting because I've seen so many kind of like marketing strategies where all of those elements are there, but it almost looks more like a shopping list. It's like, here's a list of all of the things that we're going to do. And I really love the fact that there you haven't positioned it as a shopping list. You've kind of said, here's all the things that we're going to do. But the crucial part is here's the why that
Yeah,
we're doing it, what it kind of results in, which is what you were saying about kind of segmenting it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like that. So, so that's what you would do then. That's like you would use those kind of like those frameworks, that storytelling, those dashboards, in the leadership meetings to really kind of like show not just the value of each of the elements individually, but kind of how they all work together then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it helps, earlier this summer, I was sitting down with the CEO and their leadership team, one of my clients, and they said, "Look, Smita, you always talk about growth." So this was after a few days of workshop, months of working together. The question came back to me again from the CEO. So you have been talking about growth. Can you help me understand what do you mean by growth? And this is where I had to sort of go back to the drawing board and talk about build that pipeline and surround that around everything where our customers are, and how do we build the ecosystem around the customers, and finally give what the customers want. So whether it is sales, whether it is product, whether it's marketing, are we enabling them not just with the right message but the right solution offerings that addresses the needs of the customers? And now
Yep.
that's what is truly called growth. So I said, stop asking your sales and marketing to think about pipeline, and deals every quarter. If you have a metrics and system in place, that will get addressed. Now let's elevate the conversation in the room. How are we going to build a runway to get to $500 million in the next 4 to 5 years? And now let's work backwards towards building those building blocks and accelerating our cycle year on year to get to that North Star.
Do you know what's really interesting? When I think about, I love this, by the way, what you just said is just absolutely, it's gold. What I really love about this as well is that one of the things that I find, is kind of often difficult is thinking about the positioning and messaging of the products that we're selling, right? You know, like you and I are in the same world. We're in the world of fintech, or you was at least, but I think when we're looking at positioning our kind of products and solutions, we're always thinking about them almost as like kind of like just solving kind of like one, like one problem. But actually, what we are trying to enable our clients or our prospects to do is actually to grow the company. So do you see the link I'm trying to make there? Is like, from our kind of strategic sort of point of view within our own company, within our own walls, we are thinking like that, as in like, how can we have that kind of like repeatable and scalable growth? Our customers are thinking that too. If we have that mindset, actually that we can sort of bring that mindset into the sort of way that we position and message the product as well. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love it. I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of, what I am when I'm educating the boards and CEOs about growth. And um, one of the things we are often asked is like, okay, what has gotten us here is not going to get us there, right? What got a company to first 50, the next 100 million is not going to help them scale to 500 million. So we let's think about non-commoditizing our offering, and if we really have to do solution selling. So I'm big around solution selling. But when you're doing solution selling, in the, I would say, a few years back, we will always ask our organization, think about differentiation, think about the challenges and the needs of the customers you're solving. And I think that the organizations, they're far ahead in their game and their growth curve, and they've been able to differentiate themselves. They've taken few steps ahead in line with the growth thinking. They are not thinking just about solving a customer need or coming up with pain points for their challenges. They are thinking about, how do I create alternative models of revenue for my end customer? How do I make our customers, grow their businesses, especially within the B2B world? How do I enable my customers so that they can grow 4x, 5x? Now that's where you get their attention, because everybody wants to grow rich, everybody wants to be profitable, and people want to increase their share of pie.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in the world that I work in, like in RegTech, right? Like we talk a lot about, being compliant. I mean, obviously I understand we need to be compliant, because if we're not compliant and we don't have the licenses, then we can't trade. But and then there's also the whole, operational efficiency. We need to save time, we need to cut costs. And like you said, no, the reason they need to cut costs and save time is so that they can put more of that time and cost into growing the business at the end of the day. So yeah, I love this. This is so important. So how, getting back to kind of that having that conversation then with the board around kind of the marketing strategy, I'm thinking now about we've kind of got the message across to them about how to balance the different activities that you're doing between kind of like demand and brand and product and everything. How are you then talking about the balance between people and talent in all of those areas, and budget? And especially when you're talking to the CRO who is like, I just need that pipeline filled for the next 6 months. I don't want to like think further out about, developing people and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the first thing. Even before getting the offer letter, most CMOs want to know what's the budget. What am I dealing with? And I always say a strategic CMO who's a truly commercial person, like I said earlier, would run their organization as an investment portfolio. So what I typically do is, in my first, I would say, 100-day plan, I ring fence capacity for three things: pipeline coverage now, conversion improvement, and future demand creation. Now, conversion work is often most underrated lever, sort of message clarity, proof, enablement, onboarding, life cycle management, because it improves win rate and reduces your discounting methodologies. Then I fund demand capture where intent exists, but I don't let it become the entire strategy. Finally, I invest, and I love to say invest because we need to start treating our organization as a revenue center, growth center, and not as a cost center. So I invest in durable assets that compound, for example, category narrative, customer advocacy, big on customer advocacy, and executive credibility. So, how do you sort of create personas around the executives? You have those gems and hidden treasures in the business. How do you bring them out rather than just having one face for the brand and narrative? The brand is not just the CEO. I strongly believe that brand is obviously, the product and then the people that are building the product as well. That's how we deliver this quarter without mortgaging next year. So I run it like a portfolio. Some returns now give the quick wins to the business, and some reduce the cost of growth later.
I love this. I love that. I love that whole kind of analogy about, yeah, managing like a kind of an investment. It's so clever. It's a really good way of thinking about it. So, like, how, and I mean, going back a question then, where we were talking about the frameworks and the dashboards and that sort of thing. Like, how is that kind of how you present it then, like how you would present it, like almost like this is kind of my portfolio and this is where I'm placing my bets and that sort of thing?
So very good question. I think one of the trick that has worked for me is, and we're all clever. I always say, as a CMO or head of, growth or, person who's market facing, if you cannot position yourself and your team, how will you position the business? So get your positioning right in your first 100 days. So have a dashboard based on your ICP. Your ICP board and CEO is looking for very different things versus when you're having a conversation with the CFO versus the conversation with the CRO. What do they care about? So I always have 4 set of dashboards based on the target audience I'm having conversations with. Quarterly with the board, there are certain numbers. I proactively work with the sort of business and CEOs and say, these are the 4 areas we'll present in alignment with our business goals. Top line, efficiency, how are we going to build confidence in the market capture, etc., which I'll talk in a bit. For the CRO, it's about conversion, it's about pipeline velocity, it's about sales coverage, it's about sales enablement. With the CFO, we stay focused around the return on investment. Again, reiterate that this is an investment that we're making and how we're realizing the return, and what does this mean again to the top line. And I would say take another step with the CHRO. It's about talent, about capability building. Especially now with AI, CHROs are very much interested in knowing how do you bring in AI and tech in this mix along with people part. So a clever CMO would, think about optimizing resources. And when I say resources, it's about our lovely people, our tech stack, processes, and our systems. If you have covered these 4 areas internally, then your success rate after the 100 days, I would say, becomes the probability becomes higher. So I keep it simple and commercial. Quote unquote commercial, one operating dashboard with 3 sections, but again, customize it based on the target audience I'm presenting or sharing with key themes: efficiency, confidence, and conversion. So you can think about it. Efficiency is the way we're doing things, productivity, the assets. Confidence is around in the market as well as internal. And how do you build confidence with the right narrative, with the right messaging and proposition? Conversion is when you're obviously putting in place the right programs and going after the right target audience. So efficiency covers customer acquisition cost, things like payback, pipeline cost by segment. Confidence covers your win rate, because if you're doing well within your target base, it means you're doing something right. So your win rate gets higher. Your sales cycle length reduces. Your pipeline cost by sales cycle length reduces. Discount rate changes, and your inbound to outbound mix changes. For example, this morning, the conversation I had with one of my potential clients, we were talking about how do we make this engine successful so that 80% of our pipeline creation is through inbound versus 20%, 80% inbound, 20% outbound. It's like bingo, because then we are thinking about the right messages proposition to build top of the funnel, I don't want to say brand, but they've said it. When you're thinking about inbound means if you have the bad brand in the market, you've created the category, you have clear leadership, then inbound becomes a very sort of automatic outcome of the right things you've done for top of the funnel. So when we've done all this, I map ownership. For example, I mentioned earlier that demand captures intent, product marketing sharpens why us and improves conversion, brand reduces friction and protects pricing. And when all these teams operate as one system, you just don't get pipeline, you get better deal economics, and then suddenly you get the eyes and ears of your CFO, the CEO, and your CRO.
Smitha, I am so going to have to listen back to this podcast again. Honestly, it's so good. It's just making my brain just completely buzz with so many things. But one of the things that just kind of occurred to me, like thinking about our kind of own marketing strategies and how we would have our kind of like our content pillars, and then what we would do with the content pillars is we would align all of the personas of our ICP back to those content pillars. You're doing exactly the same thing there. Like, we forget as marketing leaders that our customers are internally in the business. We just need to spin all of that really great marketing strategy work that we do externally with our own kind of prospect marketing, and kind of almost spin it in-house, right? Your personas are those different the different C-suite members that you have, your CFO, like you say, the HR person, the product person. You just map those content pillars, which is your, what was it, efficiency, confidence, and I can't remember the third one. Yeah, exactly. Map those against each of those and then say, okay, how do I tell those stories in their language according to like their pain points, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, the one last, and you know how much I love sharing my stories,
I
it's
love
so
your stories.
fascinating, right? When you meet, I would say I feel I'm lucky and fortunate that I've had the chance to meet so many incredible people from across the walks of industry and life over the last 4+ decades, without anybody guessing magic age, is I think every question that challenges me to think, how am I going to approach this. So a few years back, I was sitting down over breakfast meeting with one of the board members who also happened to be with one of the private equity firms that I was supporting. They asked me a question, so Smita, when you come on board, and help us build how are you going to support sales? So I smiled, I took a few moments to say, I said, what I want to build is an organization and capabilities that is going to enable sales so that they can close deals faster. So immediately, it's not that I wanted to challenge him or fight him. It was more about changing his perception about marketing and the organization. It's not about a service desk and how do you support sales. If you're enabling your sales team, you are winning together in the market.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. That's so good. So good. We're slightly coming up to time, but there's a burning question that I have for you that I really have to ask you. And if you had like we discussed about the whole, right at the start, about the whole brand versus demand, and if you had a bunch of founders or CEOs, C-level people listening to this that weren't marketers, and we could give them the opportunity to not ask the question, are you a brand or a demand person? Like, what would you suggest that they ask instead? What could be that question?
Well, I'm going to ask them to replace their questions with a question that forces both time horizons that we talked about. So the question would be, how will you deliver this quarter and build compounding growth for next year? Or operationally, what levers will you move to improve win rate and protect pricing while still feeding a healthy pipeline? Or what can we do now in the next 6 months while still build the runway for the next 3 to 5 year exit plan? Now, that makes it clear that marketing isn't a channel, it's a growth engine. The best CMOs don't choose between now and next, Lucy. We know it. They build a system where short term execution funds the long term advantage that we have. So I would just say, well, what levers will you just move that will you move that compound, not just spike a chart?
I love that. That's such a great question instead to ask. I always get asked quite a lot about the difference between sort of sales and marketing. And my answer is always the same. It's actually that we're both sales. I know that's a bit like a bit contentious, but sales is kind of short-term sales, marketing is long-term sales. That's kind of the way to think about it. So, and there's different tactics that we have to do the long-term and the short-term sales.
Yeah, and people who are into racing, and if you ran a relay race, it's about in this together. We are just passing the baton to the next person
Yeah.
with the end goal of reaching the destination together. So it's not about you versus me, it's about us getting there. And we all have our part to play. It's just that we have to remember a good marketing organization stays close to the customer's heartbeat. What
Yeah.
exactly is the customer sentiment, and can I help them grow?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness, that's such a beautiful quote to end this on. But I could talk to you forever, and maybe we'll have to get you back another time and have another conversation. But thank you so much. I just yeah, like I said, I'm going to definitely have to go back and listen to this again and just make a ton of notes because I always learn so much from you. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Lucy. I think I love, 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 love our conversations. I learn a lot from you as well. And like I was saying earlier today, my God, you are this aura of positivity and shine. Like wherever you are in the room, it just shines. And with
Oh,
the
bless
knowledge you
you.
have, with the experience you have, and the incredible value you bring to the table wherever you sit at. So thank you, and it's an honor to be with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And I hope the rest of the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. So, yeah, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.